Hello, this is Haider Ali, and we're looking at Chapter 11 of Principles of Marketing. This question asks, give examples of each of the following: perfect price discrimination, direct segment discrimination, indirect price discrimination, and uniform pricing. It then asks, for any three of these pricing methods, explain why firms may find it profitable to use them in certain circumstances. Again, as I've explained with other topics, the first part of the question is relatively straightforward. The second part is more challenging because you're being expected to apply the concepts to actual pricing methods that firms use. Bear in mind that the question only asks you for three of these pricing methods to be discussed in the second part of the answer. So, in terms of examples of different types of price discrimination, what we have with perfect price discrimination is that it enables firms to charge prices according to the elasticity of demand that different segments have. And it requires marketeers to be able to segment markets effectively and for segments not to be able to engage in arbitrage. This type of discrimination can be effective, for example, where the salesperson can directly negotiate with the buyer and agree a price with each individual customer, e.g. in the sales of expensive electronic goods, some luxury goods, and so on. So, in reality, the sorts of situations where we find this happening is, for example, where we go into a store and the products that are available do not have any prices marked on them. You often find this when you go into stores selling slightly expensive products when you're overseas as a tourist. What happens in those instances, say you're buying pottery in another country, the salesperson will come to you and they will explain or show you the different products they have available, and what they will generally tend to do is start off at an extremely high price. What they're trying to do with this method is to test the elasticity of your demand. If you have a great deal of information about these products, you know what alternatives are available, you know what substitutes are available, you know how much the product is actually worth, you will very quickly come down to a reasonable price, or a price that you think is reasonable, and you'll then be able to conclude your negotiations. On the other hand, if, as far as you're concerned, this is a unique product that you cannot buy anywhere else, and that you believe this is a very high quality piece of work, then you will be willing to settle for a much higher price. What the seller is able to do in this situation, because they negotiate the price individually with each customer, is that they test each individual customer's elasticity of demand and price the product accordingly. Now, clearly, it makes sense for the marketeer to do this where a product is relatively expensive and it's worth the while of the salesperson to spend a few minutes or even longer with each individual customer. What you find is that marketeers will generally not tend to do this when it comes to, say, convenience goods, goods costing just a few dollars or a few cents or a few pounds, because clearly the time invested by the salesperson to haggle won't really make it worthwhile. So with perfect price discrimination, the marketeer negotiates the price with each individual customer, and there are certain markets in which we can see this happening. You often also find this with various large ticket items, very expensive items for the home, such as, say, in the United Kingdom, you have sales of, say, double glazing, which is a large consumer home purchase, which costs many thousands of pounds or thousands of dollars, and there the salesperson will negotiate the price with each individual customer. Direct price discrimination, on the other hand, refers to firms charging different prices to each identifiable segment. This type of discrimination requires the firm to be able to identify each segment, i.e. there should be a fixed and identifiable basis for segmenting the market, and the scope for arbitrage by customers is that they can buy in markets where products are cheap and sell in more expensive ones. The criteria that can be used by marketeers is geography, nationality, age, employer, and purchasing history. So, for example, A situation where this is used is where marketeers sell products relatively more cheaply in developing countries, but at more expensive prices in developed markets. And this applies to a range of, say, consumer goods, consumer durables, convenience goods, and so on. And the point here about arbitrage is that sometimes it's possible for entrepreneurs to buy relatively cheap products in the developing country and then sell it at a higher price in the developed market. For example, it's possible in the United Kingdom in some stores to buy packets of Colgate toothpaste which were originally manufactured for sale in some African country. And clearly what some marketers have done is bought large quantities of these in the African countries and then sold them within the United Kingdom. Indirect price discrimination refers to where the firm is not able to directly identify customers. It has no direct basis for segmentation, but the firm is able to have some control over a variable to which buyers are differentially sensitive. An example here is to do with pricing on various discount airlines, where the firm sets prices which vary significantly, but depending on how close to the time of departure the passenger wishes to travel. So, for example, if a passenger books a month in advance, then they may be able to get the seat price at a relatively low. They may be able to get the seat at a relatively low price. But on the other hand, if the customer wants to book the seat a day before departure, the price will be very high indeed. What the company is doing in this instance is it's saying to itself that the person who is booking a month or 2 months in advance perhaps has fairly elastic demand. They're able to change their plans to suit their needs, and they will only perhaps travel if the price is low enough. On the other hand, someone who's booking a day before they travel is more likely to have inelastic demand, that they must travel on that particular date, and as a result, they're charged a great deal more. A related form of indirect price discrimination are trade-in discounts. So, for example, a camera store may offer a $50 discount on the purchase price of a new camera for anyone who trades in an old camera. Now, this is because people with old cameras are likely to have elastic demands for new cameras than consumers with no cameras at all to trade in, because the old camera is likely to be a substitute for the new camera. So by offering a trade-in discount, retailers are providing an incentive to their customers to group themselves according to the elasticity of demand. With uniform pricing, the firm gains cost benefits by charging all customers the same prices. We see this most clearly in supermarkets, for example, where all consumers who go into the supermarket are charged the same price. In these situations, it's not possible perhaps to either segment the market according to different price elasticities of demand, or where there's a risk of arbitrage, or it would be too expensive to do so. This slide summarizes some of the points being made here in the following way. What we have at the top is perfect price discrimination, where you set an individual price for each customer. At the bottom, you have uniform pricing, the same prices being charged for all customers. And what we can see is that although profitability rises the more we go towards perfect price discrimination, the actual ease of setting prices rises as we go towards uniform pricing. And firms will choose a point along this scale which they believe best matches their needs.